Okay, we're going to dive into talking about traffic stops a little bit more. Okay, when you're being pulled over, you're being stopped because of a public safety concern. While there are well-publicized instances of when law enforcement officers seem to have stopped people for other reasons, the vast majority of traffic stops are uneventful and unremarkable. The officer is doing what they have been hired and trained to do, protect public safety. The officer must initially treat each stop with the utmost caution. That means they must initially assume the worst and act accordingly. Your job is to help them do their job, and the best way is to stay level-headed and calm. Okay, jumping ahead here. Okay, so what should you do when they turn those lights on and you're about to be pulled over? Step one is to let the officer know that you see them and that you are responding. So pull over wherever you can, safely stop out of traffic with room, leaving room for the squad car behind you. You want to activate your turn signal or your hazard lights. Put that vehicle in park, turn off your music, get off your phone, open your windows, so roll your windows all the way down. If it's dark, turn on your interior lights. This just, it makes it, shows the officer that you're willing in this scenario. And then they can easily see, what's in your vehicle, that you have nothing to hide. And make sure the passengers sit still, are quiet, have their hands in plain view. So you are pulled over and the officer approaches your car. Your job is to stay calm and do whatever you can to put the officer at ease. So you want to stay in your vehicle. Keep your hands visible on the steering wheel. And I know it sounds kind of corny, but every time you're stopped, even though you're not threatening and you have nothing to, threaten the officer with, doing what we're talking about here today just really shows the officer that you respect them and that you don't have anything to hide. You want to address the officer respectfully. Don't move your hands from the wheel without explaining what you're going to do and getting permission. So even reaching into your glove box to get the insurance, for example, always say, they'll ask you for your proof of insurance and your license, and you're going to say, oh, it's in my glove compartment, can I reach down and get it? So before you do anything, always asking for permission. Always answer the officer's questions and follow the officer's instructions. If the officer is not in uniform, it is okay to keep the door locked, crack the window, and ask for an ID. But the vast majority of the time, they're going to be in uniform, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. If it's an unmarked car, it's okay to drive slowly into a well-lit area or business, or if you're coming up on a parking lot, you can pull in there. Okay. If you get a warning or a citation or a ticket, if that's issued, don't argue, yell, threaten, or criticize the officer. That's what courts are for. You can take that to the court, and that's where you can take out your anger and frustration. Your signature on a citation is not an admission of guilt. I actually got a warning not too long ago, probably less than a month ago, and I didn't have to sign anything, but if you have to sign it, you're not admitting that you're guilty. If you wish to report inappropriate behavior, ask for the officer's name and badge number. Note the date, time, and place of the stop, and contact the officer's agency. My parents lived down in Wisconsin, and my dad was going down a hill. Excuse me. And the speed limit was 55, and as he's going down this hill, he wasn't paying a lot of attention, and he was hitting his brakes, but he ended up going 65, and a state trooper pulled him over. And I think my dad was compliant, but knowing my dad, he might have not always been the most easy to get along with or most respectful. But the officer ended up just tossing the ticket into my dad's lap and was extremely rude to my dad. So in that instance, he asked for the officer's name and the badge number, and then actually went to the officer's agency and brought that up to them, that was an issue. So you can, if you feel like you're mistreated, you can totally bring that up, but most of the time the officers are there to help you. Okay, so back in the day, when they used to write citations by hand, this is what one of them would look like. And this is actually one of the most famous speeding tickets. This ticket shows it was issued in Wabasha County to Samuel Armstrong Tilley on a Honda 1000 motorcycle at 3:27 in the afternoon while southbound on US Highway 61. Towards the bottom, it's kind of hard to see Let me see if it's on this next page. Okay. The bottom is a little bit more interesting. The first offense was Minnesota statutes. Okay, I'm not going to read all those little numbers, but it was actually an aircraft up above that clocked him speeding, and he was going 205 miles per hour. Yeah, 205 miles per hour, and he actually got a fine for $215 with that. He was also tagged for reckless driving, and he actually didn't have a motorcycle license. So that's kind of one of the famous tickets in Minnesota. And on the back of the ticket, it explains how Mr. Tilley can pay. The total that he had was a $330 fine. So doing so acknowledges a guilty plea and that the violations will go on his record when you pay those citations. No signatures required. Not back then, nor today. Okay, moving forward. This is just kind of a news article on Tilley's story. Let me see if I can find. Yeah, one of the riders shot forward. So he was with another motorcyclist. And up in the aircraft, Looney was ready with his stopwatch. He clicked it once when the motorcycle reached a white marker on the road, and again at a quarter mile later. The watch read 4.39 seconds, which Looney calculated to be 205 miles per hour. That's pretty crazy because I didn't even know that motorcycles could go that fast. The State Patrol officer arrested the faster rider, 20-year-old Stillwater resident Samuel Tilley, for reckless driving, driving without a motorcycle license, and driving 140 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. So that's kind of crazy. I don't recommend ever driving that fast. I don't even think they make vehicles like cars that go that fast, except maybe the really fancy ones. Up here now is an example of a written warning today. So when I got a written warning, this is what mine looked like. You can see how much of the same format is like the old tickets. It's just computer printed nowadays. And let's move forward here. So there's just a little bit closer up. The name has been kind of blocked out there, but you can see they put down like the make and model of the car. There's some boxes that they check. They write down, how fast you were going, what actually happened. So that's the end of that. These are just the essential questions. Why are motor vehicle laws important? What is the move over law? What's the move over law?
Move over for an emergency.
Yeah, yep. And what should you do if an emergency vehicle is approaching behind you? Move over, yep. What areas should you watch to avoid conflict on the road? Well, everywhere, right? You should always be doing our SIFT, always scanning to see what's around us. And what should you do if you're stopped by law enforcement? So we just talked about that. The biggest thing with that is just being like cool, calm, and collected, not being antsy or jumpy, because then you're gonna make the officer a little bit nervous, and that's gonna give them a reason to wonder what you have in the car. So we're gonna go ahead and hand out the study guide now and give you guys some time to work on that. So there's gonna